Right? What is it with women that we blame ourselves so much? Expand on that, Megan.
Well, I think we're conditioned to do that because so much of what we create for ourselves is based on what we absorb, starting from before we're really conscious of it, right? You never sit down. Well, I shouldn't say you never, but I would say the majority of people do not sit down when they are 8 and say, what are my values? It will be that they absorb their familial values, which I have found now as an adult is not the same. Some of them are the same, absolutely. And I was raised in a really loving, awesome household, but their values in terms of, and I'll give you an example, they have a value of Christian service, of contributing and giving back to people. That is one of my values. It is not my top value, which is their top value. And the reason it's not is because I don't want to serve the same person in the same way every day. I definitely want to give back, but that means that my top value is actually newness and adventure. And it took me a very long time to accept that about myself because I thought it was frivolous. I thought it was not godlike and serious and but once I did and I accepted that, then I actually accelerated how much I contribute. I give back more now than when I had that internal war with myself.
Welcome to your Wordless podcast, the space where we redefine success, self-worth, and transformation. I am Nierras, the soul-centered architect of transformation, helping you unlock your highest potential and build a legacy beyond limits. Now, whether it is self-mastery, career breakthroughs, or wealth creation, this is where change begins. Now let's dive in. Megan, can you first share with us what was it like growing up as a Megan Warren?
Sure. Um, so what I love is that what I'm working on right now is such a reflection of my journey. And it is definitely my hard work because when I started this journey way back when, I was born in California and we moved when I was 10 to Oklahoma. And that was a big change. I did get a new, like my own bedroom. So I thought it was great, but I didn't realize what I was giving up in that moment. The boardwalk and yeah, it's a really different way of life in Oklahoma. But I had a nice middle class childhood, and my parents got divorced when I was 10, but they also created a framework for us. However, whenever there's uncertainty in life, you have a choice of how you react to it. And in that moment, I didn't have anyone who was really skilled at doing this for themselves. And so there wasn't anyone to teach me. And so I reacted like most of us do, where I tried to control everything and I tried to be the good girl and check all the boxes and move up in the world in order to achieve success. And I did that and I did it well. And so I graduated from university, summa cum laude. I got a 4.0. Like it was a lot of work and I checked those boxes hard. And then I moved to Atlanta and then Virginia and got married and moved to DC and then moved overseas. And at the end of that, moving up the corporate ladder, first for a law firm, where I worked in business development, and then for an NGO here in Switzerland. Getting to the top, I realized that success doesn't feel like I thought it would because they paint the American dream a lot and they export this globally where you are at the top, you are driving the Corvette, you've got the sunglasses on, and you feel amazing. And what I have found is that is not true. And that I took me with me. So all of the coping mechanisms I developed as a child, that was still what I was using as an adult anytime things would become uncertain. And so when I went through my divorce or I moved overseas, all of those coping mechanisms came out and they did serve me really well when I was 10. But now when I'm an adult, they start getting in my way. And so that's really where a lot of what I'm working on now comes from. It is the intersection of my experience to my training. And so I joined them together, and it really helps me help people navigate that uncertainty. And I have found out, because I went through a divorce, and I was on the kitchen floor crying.
I'm so sorry.
No, actually, no, I really see this as purposeful, as very much part of what got me here and what I needed to learn to see the comparison and the contrast. Because I moved from crying on the kitchen floor to now, I just went through a breakup again, but this breakup was 10 times more complicated with the number of people, the logistics, and you can navigate it with joy, is what I've learned.
Oh my
So
God.
from crying on the kitchen floor to dancing in the kitchen in the middle of
You
uncertainty and hardship, it is possible. And it's not rocket science. I know because I've done it. So that's what I'm excited to talk about today.
Oh my God, you're like, whatever you just said, that's like music to my ears because I too can resonate with the overachieving part. Growing up, dad has always said to my sisters and I, Nick, knowledge is the key to changing your life. Knowledge is power. Therefore, we don't come from a very well-to-do background, but this is what I can give you. And so, and because I was exposed to the American way of living, like to television shows and whatever, and so they sold this. You buy the house, you buy the cars, you travel everywhere with the private jets, and that's what success should look like. And so I bought into that as a kid, not knowing anything. Of course I would say, hey, that is what I want to achieve, so I did that. So at 19 I too went to the corporate world. I wanted to start earn like as fast as I could, and then 10 years after that I didn't feel like myself anymore. And in between that, I also thought that by 30, my life would be settled. That is to have a good, loving husband and a kid, and, get settled with my career like intact and just climbing up. But 5 years ago, I found myself having to start from scratch again. And so here I am, 5 years in. And so, Megan, I want to go back to the part where you said that all of these changes actually are the ones catapulted you to what you're doing right now. And those people tuning into us, they may be very familiar with the dialogue that I bring in with the guests, but then it's always interesting to hear it, exactly the pivotal moments that actually shape the choices or the decisions that the guests took or are taking or are going to take once they've realized, okay, success is not like this. Success should be defined in my own terms. So what was it for you? Like those pivotal moments, like there must be one or two that, that comes to mind right now.
There are, and I'll jump into those in 1 second. I just wanted to take a minute and say what is so amazing is when I hear your story, I resonate with it so much. It just means that a lot of times in these moments of uncertainty, we lock down, we feel alone, we think there's no one who understands me, no one who gets me. And yet you're across the world from me in KL, I'm in Switzerland, and we are going through similar things now. There is literally people all over the world experiencing this. And so it makes me feel really connected and close, actually, to know that there's somebody else out there who understands my experience.
Right, I got you.
But in terms of the pivotal moments, to be honest, I'm a hard-headed learner. Life likes to serve up what you need to learn, right? Until you're ready to learn it. And
Yes.
it took a while. I knocked my head on the wall quite often, but eventually my son was born. And it's funny because I had never wanted to be a single mother, which is why I hadn't really wanted to have kids in my marriage, because my partner at the time was focused a lot on work. And so I did end up having child. I did end up having child alone. And honestly, that's been
And you can laugh about it. Wow.
yeah, yeah, because I think without it, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be in this iteration of my life, and I don't want to go back. I don't want to change it. I want it to be exactly like it is. And so when my son was born, I worked full time, and I traveled 35% of the time. And I had a few teams under me that I led, and I gave my all to that. Much of my identity at the time was tied up in work. Right? You go up that corporate ladder, and the better you do at work, the better you are as a human. Like, and if you separate the two, if you decouple those, you've got a real problem, because then you have to reformulate your whole identity. And I wasn't ready to do that. When he was born, I was already sitting on the tram going past my stop to get off for work because I didn't want to get off. And I would go 2 stops past until I could force myself to get off, and I would walk back because it just didn't feel like I wanted it to feel. And then when my son was born, I started that terrible dance that they don't tell you about between I'm 100% at work and I'm 100% of a mother. How can I be? And actually, because I'm an overachiever, I was 110 and 110, right? So how can you be 220% of a person? You can't. And so then you're tearing yourself in half, and you're feeling like a failure in your whole life because you're walking into your professional life and then back into your personal life. And there's never a feeling that you're doing enough. And so that was the dance I was going through, but I was being an ostrich and I was putting my head in the sand. And when I don't want to know what I don't want to know, I'm really good, or I used to be, at avoiding it. Now I'm much better at turning and leaning in, because I've realized that you can't go over it, you can't go under it, you can't go around it, you must go through it. So finally, when my son got diagnosed with autism, it forced me to go through it. And so I find that disruption one of the biggest blessings in my life, because I finally realized something's got to give, something's got to change. I cannot maintain a life as a single mother, working full time, traveling 35%, and unroll the kind of therapy he's going to need right now. So you've got to choose. And when it came down to priorities, I chose my son. And I don't think now, having gone back to work, etc., that it's an either or. But I do think in that moment, for me, it was still black and white, and it was an either or. And actually, that's the gift, because I made it an either or, and I moved into supporting my son, which got me out of the familiar. So I couldn't break into a new pattern, a new reality, until I got out of that. And so it's very cool, actually, to see that something I feared, autism, was something I was really scared of, because I'm a connector. I focus on relationships. I'm good with people. And I didn't want a child who couldn't connect, who couldn't give me a hug. Very luckily, his autism presents very differently. And so he is very affectionate, very loving. And he is very much a disruptor, and he disrupts both. He disrupted my pattern, but he also disrupted me the other way, out of a stress response. I was really stressed out one day, and he just came over and put his little arms around me. And this was a child that I had to teach to hug me. It doesn't come naturally to him, but he put his little arms around me and he hugged me for 20 minutes. And I just sat down and stayed there. And stepping into that took me entirely out of a stress response and made me start responding to my reality very differently. So he disrupts both ways. He is the biggest gift in my life.
Wow. Oh my God.
At that moment, I think that I started then doing the work and realizing it can be different. And once I woke up, I didn't want to go back to sleep.
I had chills like I think 2 to 3 times already. Whenever you were mentioning about your son. Before we start a conversation, I just want to send the biggest hugs in the world right now to your way. Energy is felt. I believe in that. And so, Megan, I respect and truly admire your story and your candidness and your transparency. And also, I want to acknowledge you for being so brave to share those deepest parts of yourself. And okay, so I guess the people tuning in right now, they would want to know, perhaps they also have a child or children who are diagnosed as such and working, they're still working full time as well, or but they're just, at the end they just don't know what they want to do and they want to get out of it. And the question that they always ask themselves is, is there ever going to be balance? And if there's a yes and a no, and What can I do right now? Are you stuck in a job that you don't love, feeling like you're meant for more? It is not in your head, it is in your soul. I am Nierras, and I help high achievers like you break free from burnout, rewire self-doubt, and build a life aligned with purpose through coaching, hypnotherapy, and soul activation. Because let's face it, real wealth isn't just about money, it is about aligned and happy heart, mind, and soul. Now, remember, you are worthy and you are enough. Let's transform your life together. Visit www.thenierrasholisticlifestyle.com to begin.
That's a great question. And one that I think probably has a very personalized answer that's tailored to each person. I think it looks different for each person. But I do think there's some basics that somebody can do. The first of which had the biggest impact on my life, which is to get the monkey off my own back, right? Because every time there's a pressure in life, which is related to getting your child to school on time, getting to work, and getting the project done on time. Time is always the issue. And then usually there's a monkey that sits on your shoulder. It could be different animals for different people. Mine is a monkey. That tells you you're not doing it right. You're not doing enough. You're not going to get there in time. You're late. Tells you all the negative things. And I think practicing self-compassion, which when I first learned that that was the road to giving me relief, I just felt, I don't want to do this. I need to be
It's a waste of time. Yeah.
myself so that I shape up and I just get through it. And that it doesn't work. It's in those moments that we need a hug, that we need softness, that we need someone to mirror back to us that we're doing our best and we're amazing and our best is enough. And if you can learn to give that to yourself, then, and believe me, it is possible. It took me a very long time because I grew up with the opposite. The harder you are on yourself, the better you do, the more you improve your performance. But I have found in my experience that's not true. And so it did take me a while to realize that softness was the way to go. And so when I am soft with myself, then the monkey relaxes and climbs off my shoulder, and then everything feels less stressful. And so I would say that's the first thing that somebody trying to navigate that could do to find some relief in a day, because then you're not judging yourself and you're not judging other people. And you trust the universe that it's all going to be okay. If you didn't get something done in a day, maybe there's a reason you didn't get it done. The project you're working on, a resource is going to come your way that you're not even aware about. And then boom, 2 days later, when you are late on the deadline, it arrives and it changes the course of your project. I mean, you can't predict that. You can only go with the flow. And the more you can be in the flow by relaxing, by giving the monkey some pets and saying, see ya.
Tender loving care.
Yeah.
Some deals.
Yeah. And I think also getting very clear on your why. What is your why? Simon Sinek has a great process for that. And there's a couple other pieces that I mix into what I do with clients, but it's looking at what are your values? How do they align with what you're doing or not doing in your life? And why are you doing those things or not doing them? And usually they're related to some sort of hidden fear. That means you're committed to being X. And when it's an identity piece, you've got to track down the underlying assumptions about yourself and life in order to get traction on the thing that you want to do. In this case, find that balance between work and parenting. And so once you're clear on all of that, then you can make values-based decisions rather than fear-based decisions. Because with that time pressure that almost, I would say always, because I have yet to see a situation or a client where it's not an issue. That time scarcity that accompanies that work, personal balance, when you can give yourself grace, then you can overcome that. But it's a journey. When you know those assumptions and you know what's important to you, then you make those values-based decisions rather than the scarcity-based decisions that are related to time scarcity. And I'm not doing enough scarcity. I need to do more. I need to be more. So that is the second recommendation that I would make is to start getting clear on who you are, your values, and then look at what you're doing and not doing and how it aligns with those, with your why. Because when I did that, a lot of stuff left, including the traditional 9 to 5 job.
Oh, this flows nicely to my next question. Like, what do you do now? And how do you help people?
Well, so what's funny is when I left corporate, or the, in this case, the NGO, but basically corporate in the public sector, I didn't have a plan. I left because of a crisis, right? And so essentially, I just looked at what did I love doing? And I built a plan around people, around working with people. And so when I went back and I got a coaching degree, I decided that I would use this. I was thinking when I went back to get it that I would just use it in any career, et cetera, that I went into. But then it became so important to share the breakthroughs that I was making. And I started looking at defining what my why was. And I realized that my why wasn't working in HIV specifically. It was definitely contributing and giving back to people, but giving back in a different way. And so where before I had worked in business development and international law and then HIV programming, it wasn't so much the what, it was the how that was very important to me. Because you could paint a wall and you could paint it miserably and be upset in life, or you can paint it with joy. It's the same wall. It doesn't change. The paint doesn't change. And yet the experience that you have painting that wall is immeasurably different. And when it feels different because you are different, the ripples that you send out around you are completely different. And so that became my why, to change the ripples that people are making, to allow them to step into themselves and be in a way that lights them up, that makes them love life. So they get something out of it, but then they also spread the ripples. And I know that it's possible because I've done it personally and because I've seen my clients do it in small ways and big ways. You know, that little trigger that you have when you realize that the trigger is just tiny and the ammunition is in here, and the explosion, what is it telling you? And you turn and you get curious, then it's a different experience than when you're trying to avoid or change or stop the trigger. There's a big fight. And so how you're doing the thing shifts and your experience of it shifts. And then it's no longer a trigger. And it is just a beautiful way to be interconnected with somebody else.
Exactly. It's like a level up. I always say this to the people that I meet as well. Or I too got divorced 6 years ago. And so, of course, I started dating as well. But then the people that I've dated, as I went deeper into this whole spiritual journey or awakening, looking for the answers within, the more I interact with them, the more they hold up a mirror against me and showing me what are those things that I need to address, things that I suppress. And when I am accepting of that, the whole perspective change about the people. It's no longer them, it's me. I dictate, or rather I create the type of my frequency. I emit those kind of frequency. And these are the people that is attracted to my field because of that emission. And so if I wanted something, but then I believe that I am X, what am I going to attract? Not the one that I am. And it's subconscious. And there's so many interconnectedness in here. Like, I want to also touch on the fact that I can feel that you're in your feminine because, going, hustling and grinding, that's like sitting in our masculine, right? And right now it's more about allowing and also receiving. And when you said that you are actually helping your clients experiencing the same things that what you have experienced, what is the common denominator or common denominators that you see from them? Are they like, from 9 to 5 as well, or just single mothers or working moms jumping into entrepreneurship? What are they?
They run the gambit. I think the two interconnecting things are that they are women and that they are overachievers, and also that they have checked all the boxes. They're at the top of their game and they're wondering, why doesn't this feel like I thought it would? What is wrong with me? Because they go two directions, right? They either say, they blame something else, the situation, and they feel stuck, or they blame themselves. And most often in the women that I coach, I see they blame themselves. Interestingly, a lot of the men, not all of them, but a lot of them blame the situation.
Hi, I'm Nierras, your host of the Your Worthless podcast. Now, if these real raw stories hit home, don't wait. Please follow, like, and subscribe my Spotify and YouTube. For bite-sized inspirational reels, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Don't wait. Your transformation starts today. Thank you, and bye for now. Right? What is it with women that we blame ourselves so much? Expand on that, Megan.
Well, I think we're conditioned to do that because so much of what we create for ourselves is based on what we absorb, starting from before we're really conscious of it, right? You never sit down. Well, I shouldn't say you never, but I would say the majority of people do not sit down when they are 8 and say, what are my values? It will be that they absorb their familial values, which I have found now as an adult is not the same. Some of them are the same, absolutely. And I was raised in a really loving, awesome household, but their values in terms of, and I'll give you an example. They have a value of Christian service, of contributing and giving back to people. That is one of my values. It is not my top value, which is their top value. And the reason it's not is because I don't want to serve the same person in the same way every day. I definitely want to give back, but that means that my top value is actually newness and adventure. And it took me a very long time to accept that about myself because I thought it was frivolous. I thought it was not godlike and serious and but once I did and I accepted that, then I actually accelerated how much I contribute. I give back more now than when I had that internal war with myself. So I think that's part of it. We absorb the messages that our families send. The other part is societal messages. Women are often conditioned to support, to arrange themselves around the family, to put others first, people please, to mediate, to keep the harmony. And I think these are really critical, actually, and capacities that we have that if we cultivate purposefully can shift. And I have watched this. It's almost like, let's say I was in a drum circle recently and I didn't have a drum in the beginning and everybody was drumming and there was no coherence in the circle. Everybody was drumming to their own rhythm. And then they gave me the drum and I thought, well, I'm just going to play with this to see. And so I started drumming fairly loudly, but in a very consistent rhythm. And pretty soon everybody in the circle was playing that same rhythm. And I think that's what feminine power is about. When we embody it in ourselves and we bring that forward gently and people experience us, they shift. They respond differently. And it is really incredible because it's a soft, it's not somebody in the drum circle, for example. I didn't stop everyone and say, hey, I'm going to do this and you're going to follow me. It's a coming from behind. It is a support so that you start with the drum, you set a pace, and then I made it softer. And you could hear all the individual drums and they come louder. And then, to be honest, a lot of what I work in is self-leadership. And I think that's what leadership in general is, coming from behind, creating the conditions to make others shine. And when you can do that, you step into your power. And when you step into your power and you fully live your purpose, life feels extraordinary, even if your conditions haven't really changed. And then what I found is that they do begin to change the longer that you step into that and you live that. And there are very simple things you can do, but no one talks about and no one tells you about. We don't learn these in school like we do math or science, right? So if we start talking about this earlier, I think it would be very beneficial.
Wow. Oh, whatever that you said, it's just like whatever that I wanted to articulate, or what I've been articulating to the public or the people that come and listen to my show. And Megan, I think the act of leading, or if I could rephrase what you mentioned, is actually walking the talk.
Yeah.
We want people. Being a leader is not about asking people to do what. It's actually doing it yourself and then being the example, and then watch others follow you from behind. It's natural. And I am not going to pinpoint, because I too, we both were from the corporate, and so there are so many types of managers out there, management styles. But I think this is very apparent and especially important for coaches and people who are not just in their career or their in their business. It's important to see and evaluate their purpose, which is what you mentioned, why. And nobody can teach you that unless you have the courage to go through it yourselves. And that means understanding your triggers, facing your fears. What is it exactly that you're fearing, and moving through it. And I also want to point out the fact that a coach is actually, it acts as a guide, beacon of light to help you through whatever journey you're on. And so I want to bring this to the work that you do, Megan, coaching. You coach women and you coach, those high achievers like yourself. And how, okay, so let's say one is tuning in right now and they want to sign up with you. How can they do that? And how would you take them through the program?
Sure. So to sign up, you would contact me. My contact is very simple. It's meganwarrencoaching@gmail.com. And I have a Calendly link, which is just calendly@meganwarren.com. And in terms of what I do, I partner with people, with women specifically. I have male clients as well, but most of them are exploring stepping into their feminine to be able to change how they
We're going
lead.
to talk
Which
about
is
that.
yeah. And we all have feminine and masculine energy inside, right? And I think it's balancing that and using the best of both in that polarity. But so people come to me and I partner with them. And I think one of the things about coaching in particular that's critical is that it creates the conditions for transformation. And I didn't realize this in the beginning because a lot of this work I did by myself. And it took me decades, right? It took me ages. And it's stopping, starting, stopping, starting. You can't get traction. You don't know where you're going and you're going in circles. And then finally something clicks. But I realized recently that you can accelerate your growth if the conditions are right. So if you plant a plant in cement, it might grow, but it is certainly not going to thrive. If you plant a plant in a container and you nourish the soil and you put fertilizer and you cultivate it and you shower it with love and you water it, it's going to bloom. And that's kind of what coaching does. It creates that container because, you sit down with friends and you say, oh my God, this happened, da da da. And they say, how dare he? That can be possible. Shame. You should just move on, etc. And that keeps you in the same reality. It keeps you stuck. It might feel better in that moment, but it doesn't feel better over the long term. Coaching provides a very different environment. It's a very cultivated, held space where you can be authentically you, where there's no pressure, no direction. You are the guide. Coach is also the guide for the how you do this, but you are the guide in terms of the direction that you're going. And I think often in friendships, especially when a friend has something, they are influenced by what you do and or they are sharing who they are and what's important to them, it influences what you do. So in a coaching relationship, that objectivity is present, whereas it's not in a friendship. And so when you're in that objective, but carefully cultivated and held space, I do a lot of work, and I would imagine you do too, to co-regulate yourself and to create that safety for the client to show up exactly as they are in whatever form that looks like, whether it's a day where they scraped themselves out of bed, or it's a day where they're walking off stage and it's their biggest win yet, and they want to jump around, but they don't want to brag. Like, the space where they should brag, right?
It's like you're reading off of the script of my head right now. Like whatever they're saying, it's like, yes, they're exactly what I'm thinking right now.
Yeah. But it's a very different relationship that allows you to transform because you're nourished, because you're fertilized, because you have the space to go wherever you want, however you want, and to play. And I also make it fun because I don't believe that this work needs to be hard and miserable. And it took me a couple of decades to figure that out. That it doesn't have to be crying on the kitchen floor, that you actually can navigate all of this laughing. You can navigate all of this dancing in the kitchen. You can find the moments of joy and you can brag about your growth, which is funny because a lot of times that's the hard thing to see, right? Like on a day where you encountered 5 triggers, you didn't react. You chose to purposefully respond. You processed it in the moment. Dude, you want to strut and brag, but who are you going to turn to and tell that to? Well, you're going to tell it to a coach because they get you. They know. And so I think that's a lot of what I do for clients, is creating those conditions that actually allow them to fully bloom into themselves. And it is,
And
I don't know about you, but it is such a joy.
it is.
It's like it gives back, doesn't it?
It's like it's refueling me. So I go and talk to them like, so how do you feel about this? And oh, I want to do this. And I told them very early on during the session, I said, this is a no judgment space. You can be whoever you want. And I am just here to hear out. But also, I'm here to point out the very things that you might not want to discuss or address immediately, but take them back and process it. And, because because it's a coach, it's about elevating yourself. I don't want to say fix because fix seems very, very, I don't, it's very loosely used, but it's like uncovering whatever that the belief that you had before, the beliefs that you had before, and understanding why it presented themselves today. And so when you understand all these things, it's so much easier for you to understand why you're acting this way. And therefore, once you eliminate those, you can reframe those things, and then step into your power. And when they do that, I get reminded of it myself. Like coaches can be very, very lonely, I would say. And that's why it's so important for us coaches to be surrounded by our own community. And so I just love the fact that right now, what I do, even though I don't think nobody in my circle that I know of is doing this, but I just keep on doing it. Like regulated myself. Sales have not been stable. Of course, I have to co-regulate that. I have to regulate that. But the fact that I could actually still get up in the morning and reply to those messages, those inquiries that comes in, and it's a win for me too, because Nick, it is a journey. It's not a destination. It's who you become after that. And so thank you for that, Megan.
But I love that because you literally embodying what you are doing with clients. And I think it's that for me, what's so critical is not that it's not theory. It isn't, because how many times have you gone to somebody and they can tell you, and I used to be able to do this inside and out. I could tell you all the things that I needed to do or you needed to do, but I couldn't actually do them. And now at the intersection of being able to do them, practicing over and over on myself till you get it right, then you understand what the client is living through. And then you apply it in a totally different way. And then they feel seen and heard and held when they know you get it, that you've been there, you've done that. You've been down, face down in the mud, right? On that 26th mile of that marathon. And you've got yourself up and you've crossed the finish line. And then they trust you to guide them. So actually, I was told when I first learned coaching that we weren't supposed to share a lot about our own journeys, that it was focused on the client. I actually do focus my sessions on the client, but I now share. And I share so that they feel kind of like we started the conversation with. your experience and my experience are very similar, even though they're across the world. And it makes you feel less alone. It makes you feel seen in a way that somebody who hasn't gone through a divorce might not be able to see you. And so I think when we show up authentically and we share a little bit of our experience while keeping it focused on the client, and we extrapolate what we're taking forward, they really feel connected to us, and it makes possibility possible for them.
Yes, for reach, mic drop, Megan. Okay, so yes, you were saying.
Oh, I was just going to quickly say, but I think a lot of people, because it's inside stuff, they think it's vague. They think they can't really do it. They don't know where to start. And I just want to make sure that we underscore the fact that this work is possible. It is not rocket science. If you and I can do it, everybody can do it, right? It's just getting clear on what's needed, changing your thoughts, changing your state, working together to create a new reality, and doing it over and over consistently, reliably, showing up for yourself, getting it wrong, trying again, asking for guidance, trying something new, and over and over. And eventually, your possibility, your future self, what you want to create becomes real because you've now done it enough times that is your reality. But I think that's what, if people walked away from this conversation with nothing else, that it is possible, that there is a process, that we can take them through it, and they can achieve this in their own life to feel extraordinary no matter the circumstances. And that's a superpower, because if you are fireproof, you can walk through the fire and not be burned because you control your own flame inside.
Exactly. And when you show up that way, the people around you will notice. And that's when they start asking, oh, how did he or she do it? I want to know. And then you're going to start that ripple. And so you're changing the world. Before you know it, you're changing the world by just taking the steps yourself first and then showing up.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay, Megan, I want to go back quickly to the part where you said you also help male clients step into their femininity. What does that look like? I just want to address those people tuning in that are my male followers or subscribers. We love you. We're pro males here.
So I think it looks different for every client, but I have one right now who is in a period of uncertainty where he is making a jump from corporate into a new lifestyle. He is in that liminal space of that between space of, I'm no longer working in corporate. I'm not sure what the future looks like. And for me, this is a space of magnificent creativity. It's a space
I
to
love
create
that.
a different reality. But it's that idea of when he feels fear and he wants to control, he goes for the traditionally masculine reaction, which is not to soften and not to sit with it, but to armor up and take action and be decisive and go right back into a career. And
A 9 to
so,
5.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that idea of questioning yourself, of getting curious, of being soft with yourself, of the minute you want to take action, doing the opposite, sitting with it first. He's practicing. And some days I think are easier for him than others, which is like everybody else. But it's the first time he's actually considered exploring his purpose and what he's supposed to bring, rather than he's just supposed to be the provider. Because I think there is a
I
lot
love
of
that.
pressure on males to provide and to be the support system in a very different way than women, but to still be a support system, mostly financially, usually, and often in very decisive sort of leadership roles. But the idea to take a step back and lead from behind, and then lead yourself from behind as well, is something that he's playing with. And I think he is still very much in the middle of this journey, but he is finding the courage every day to talk about his fear, to do the work of connecting to his inner child, which was a big leap, but to see that little boy had the same trajectory of development and coping mechanisms that are showing up now that are getting in their way that I had for my little inner child. And so if you can look at that as a universal thing, we develop coping mechanisms to protect ourselves. They do support us in that moment, but unless they evolve with us, then they get in our way as adults. And so, and to understand what his values are and to do just what we talked about with the women, which is you look at your family, you look at your community, what are the messages you receive about how you should be? And so a man who says, I don't know, that's often not okay. A woman who
What do you
says,
mean you don't know?
exactly. Yeah. So I think he's finally, for the first time, asking what he would like. And that isn't a lot, just like a lot of the women, he's not asked that. And so that's where I love the similarities in the overlaps between male and female and why the energies are just both within us and the experiences are often similar. Because I think once you take away that external stuff and you get to the heart of the matter and the core experience, the experience is often very similar.
Amen. I'm gonna let that sink in. Okay, Megan, what is next for you? Oh no, what are you working on currently?
So I have a coaching practice and I am working with my co-founder on a new business called Me Reimagined. And
Oh, okay.
it's to take what we do in coaching, which is to help people reimagine how they are in this life to feel extraordinary, but also to have the courage and find the courage to step into what they really would like to do. Because everybody's got that secret song inside, right? That they want to follow. And then some people do as a hobby, some people deny completely and say, that's not for me. And some people will make the jump, but then they don't have any intentionality behind it. What are they going to create? They just make the jump based on a feeling. And so we are working to set up a framework of training for them, but to do it in a community, specifically a community that provides the container, where it is a community of high achieving women who feel nourished because they are coming together with other women who have the same experiences, who have the same questions about life, who are focused on growth, who are saying, I don't see the growth moment right now. I'm on the kitchen floor crying, and who need to be held, but then who need to be picked up, who need to be championed, who need to be held accountable sometimes, because the mirror you talked about, we serve as mirrors for each other. And I will say that in this community, it's new and it's small, but we've already seen some extraordinary shifts just from people being able to share where they're at vulnerably. And that's incredibly different. We had a couple women come in and say right up front, I don't really feel comfortable sharing that much. And then last week, I got two massive stories about very intimate things. And it's because that is the kind of space that we create, the space where they are safe to share that. There's no judgment. There's only understanding. And it's in that kind of thing, when you feel seen, when you feel heard, that you are able to make that transformation from A to B that you weren't able to do by yourself. And because you have two coaches in there as well guiding you, then it really becomes a transformative experience. So, Idun and I, we don't say that we've got it all worked out. We are still navigating our own journeys. We are sharing where we're at. We're sharing what's going on literally in an embodied way. So I just went through a breakup literally 2 weeks ago. They moved out. So I am taking and extrapolating the lessons that I'm learning through myself and what I'm applying from that in real time so that people see it, so that they apply it in theirs. And I'm asking as well, what do you all have that you're learning? It is a mastermind group of women coming together, and it is extraordinary.
My gosh, Megan, and you speak like your life is just running like that, like it's all beautiful. But I mean, the way that you showed up today, even though you just had a breakup last 2 weeks, I'm sure it wasn't pretty. And I just want to commend you. And I'm very, very grateful for you to be here today, to be sharing your story with the level of enthusiasm that you have, the energy, and I can feel it through the screen. And people tuning in right now, I hope they feel and they understand that this is actually real and we're not just talking, we're actually embodying it. And so, but people need nurturing. People need to be taught or shown things repeatedly. Only then they'll understand and they'll remember it. And so we are the change makers and we're not going to stop. So even if, as long as whatever it is that you take away from today, even if it's just one thing, I hope this plants a seed for your future. And so, Megan, we're going to pivot to a self-worth question today. Now, you mentioned you used to tie your self-identity to your achievements. My question to you is, how do you now define your self-worth and how has it evolved?
Self-worth was a big journey for me. And what's interesting is that I heard a Mel Robbins podcast, and Mel Robbins was talking about the bronze medal mindset. And in that episode, she talked about a gymnast for the US Olympic team who essentially was blind. And they told him that he would never be a gymnast. He was very good at the bar.
Right.
Where they twirl their legs and stuff over and around this pommel horse thing. And they told him that he was really like top level at that, but because he had lost his vision, he wasn't going to be good at, for example, the floor routine. He couldn't do that. And so that he would never be the kind of gymnast who would make the Olympic team because you needed to be an all-around gymnast. And he turned and leaned right into what they told him was his weakness. And he became the best he could be because he just loved it. And sure enough, the US Olympic team just won in this last Olympics. The men's team won, and it was the first time in decades. And the reason that they won was because of this guy. He gave the final performance. It all came down to him. If he had messed it up, they would not have won. And he did what he does. He visioned inside himself the feeling. And because he can't see, it's actually enables him. It becomes his superpower because he does it using other senses. And that puts him at the top of his game. And that inspired me to lean into what I thought was my biggest weakness, which is self-worth and credibility. And so I started a podcast on it and talking about how self-worth and this issue where nobody has it, and it's an epidemic. And then over time, that changed. And it changed to come not from scarcity anymore, but as I grew into self-worth and started feeling like this actually was my superpower, then it shifted to a state of abundance. And so instead of looking at how you can find self-worth outside of yourself, it's you already are worthy. How can you bring that out? How can you shine that light and allow it to shine? And we have had some really awesome interviews. We've had some really cool one-on-one shares. It's a journey that started with me seeking self-worth and has finished with me realizing that it was there all along. I just couldn't see it. Most of it came from self-compassion, of keeping a regular journal and reframing thoughts and looking forward and stepping into my future self. What would she think? What would she do in this situation? And through time, it feels completely different to walk through the world knowing that you have worth, that what you are doing is good enough. And it isn't perfect. I still struggle, when my son, he has eating issues. And so sometimes when I can't get food down him, I feel like I'm a not good mother. So it's not perfect. But then I make a very purposeful effort to sit down and say, honey, you're doing enough. And I hug myself, and I have holding hands with my inner child on one side and holding hands with my inner adolescent on the other. And I think of myself like Megan's Angels, like that movie Charlie's Angels, only I'm Megan's Angels. And the three of us go through the world together. And every time I start to feel a little bit like maybe I'm not enough, I reach down, sometimes literally, not just figuratively in my mind, and I hold her hands. And that makes me feel like I'm enough because we've got each other's backs. And so I think when you embrace who you are, and you start, it's funny how confidence also is linked and it changes, because when you start to focus on what you're bringing and you're not focused on yourself, it's like, it's almost as if you have a lens, right, of a video, let's say, and before you're talking to yourself, you're delivering a speech and you're alone in your room and you're fine. You're singing, right, on karaoke, whatever it is you're doing, and there's no one watching, and you are completely yourself. And you are bringing what it is you are meant to bring to the world. But then you add a video, and suddenly there's this self-consciousness that causes you to feel not confident because you're thinking more about how they're perceiving you than you are. And so when you start focusing on self-worth and that it's going to be okay, that whatever you do is enough, what happens is that disappears, that lens of self-consciousness, and the focus shifts to what are you bringing forward? What are you giving? How are you serving? And when that comes, the confidence is just there because it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what you're bringing. And there is nothing to be self-conscious or unconfident or feeling like it's not enough, because you believe that the world needs it. And then it just flows. So that's a little bit of my self-worth journey.
That was the message that I needed to hear today. Thank you. Thank you, God. And thank you to you too, Megan. So what is your heart's greatest wish?
My heart's greatest wish? That I would mainstream inner development, that people would understand that it's worth doing before you hit a challenge, because my God, you are so much more prepared for life if you could do these things. I mean, you look at every other piece of our lives, we pre-plan the crap out of it, right? You get insurance. I mean,
Guilty.
Switzerland, I was shocked, but you have insurance for your bike. I mean, in case of an accident, you pre-plan everything. So just like that, I mean, you save for a rainy day. You go to school to be prepared for a job. We prepare and plan for everything, but we do not do this with our internal worlds. And so where we can think of this as preparation for life and begin that as young as possible. It's never too late. And where we can understand that you can do it with play, with joy, and that it's fun. It is not this miserable slog. Oh my God, I have to talk to my inner child again today. I have to unpack some of these bags that I have emotionally you put together and have been carting with me for the last 2 decades. When you're in the right space, in the right conditions, then it's not this miserable alone time. It is you pulling out something and somebody else like, I have that same thing in my bag, and laughing about it. It's saying, well, what do you do with that thing? And then we share experiences and stories. And it's learning in relation with other people how to be. And then when a challenge in life arrives, dude, you are not hanging on behind the boat, like inhaling water because you've fallen off the skis and it's going up your nose. You are surfing. You are surfing with the waves. And again, it comes back to flow. You learn to flow. And you can do that before the challenge arrives. So that it doesn't matter the size of the waves.
How I wish we could somehow make this a curriculum in the school for young kids. Start talking about them, about their inner child. They would grow to so much more resilient adult, and I don't know. It'll be invincible because they've taught and trained since they were kids to do just that and to have their own backs, especially with, if they face bullying and those sorts of things. And you just gave me a great idea, Megan.
Maybe. Yeah. It's your calling to develop a curriculum for the school.
Who knows? Yeah, who knows?
They've
Okay.
started doing this in the US out of Yale
Oh, they
University
did? They did?
schools.
Oh, they did? Okay.
But they're only doing, as far as I know, kind of learning emotional language, granularity. So the other things like the inner child work, they're not doing yet. So I think perhaps coming up is going to be a
Perhaps
leader.
weakish.
Yeah.
Perhaps weak. That's a good one. Yeah. Okay. So, right, Megan, we're going to go to this last question of mine. if you could create a quote right now for you to leave to the audience listening, and the world as your legacy, what would it be?
Connecting to yourself changes how you move through the world and makes you a change maker.
Thank you. I saw you included the word change maker. I don't know. It came out of the blue today. Wow. That was beautiful. That was beautiful, Megan. Thank you. Okay. Before we wrap this up, how can people reach out to you?
So you can contact me on email. So that's meganwarrencoaching@gmail.com. You
Okay.
can also find me on Instagram, meganwarren_coaching, or you can find me at me_reimagined_community. Also on
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Now, any last parting message?
just one last thing. If
Okay.
you come into our Facebook group, the Me Reimagined Facebook group, you can join our free summit. We have 6 extraordinary women talking about their experiences. And so they're part of our community. This is kind of what you'll get as you come into our community. And we're giving it for free so you can have an experience of the kinds of things that we share, the level of vulnerability, the fact that there are women from all walks of life across this world who are doing the work, who are navigating this and literally embodying transformation. And so that starts today. The first talk will drop later tonight. And
Tonight. Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
And then there's one talk per day for 6 days. And so you come into the Me Reimagined Facebook group. So look for us there.
Already making waves. Wow, Megan, I am in awe and I am super grateful for the work that you do for the world. Okay, now it is a wrap on today's inspiring episode with Megan Warren. Thank you for your wisdom and for continuing to uplift the world with the work that you do, Megan. For our listeners, this has been Your Worthless. Read that again, the juxtaposition of your very soul. Now, if you've ever felt worthless, remember, you are not alone. Your soul chose to be here to matter. And for that reason alone, you are worthy. A huge thank you to you again, Megan, and to all of you for listening. Until next time, I am Nierras. Keep shining, keep growing, and always remember, you are worthy and you are enough. See you in the next episode. Thank you, Megan, for your time.
Thank you.
Awesome. Hi, Megan. Good morning to you. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon. I'm doing well.
Thank you.
Great day to start the way, seeing your face.
Megan, right back at you. Well, thank you so much for reaching out and for saying yes to be interviewed today. I'd like to introduce you to all of my listeners. And before that, I'd like to introduce myself first to all of our subscribers tuning in right now. So my name is Nicolette. I am the creator for the podcast titled You're Worthless. Read that again, the juxtaposition of your very soul. Now, today we're going to talk about self-identity, self-worth, and basically anything under the sun regarding that topic. Hello, everyone. We have Megan Warren here with us. Megan inspires inner development through curiosity and play. She's the co-founder of Me Reimagined, a community of high-achieving women transforming from within such that they feel extraordinary regardless of their circumstances. Now, I know there's a lot more that we can unpack from that, but I'd like to hear it from the person herself. So, Megan, can you first share with us what was it like growing up as a Megan Warren? Love this episode? Now, transformation doesn't end here. Head on to at holistic.lifestyle_with_Nick. That is on my Instagram. Or head on to my website, www.denierras.holisticlifestyle.com for more info on my coaching framework, which is the Worthy, Authentic, and Abundant Framework, digital guides, and my upcoming events such as retreats and master classes and workshops. Now, I also do intuitive readings where we get to check